The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a sound like distant thunder, revealing a space so vast that clouds formed near its ceiling. Captain James Morrison stepped through the threshold, his black military uniform stark against the shimmering walls that pulsed with alien technology. Behind him walked Ambassador Lisa Carter, her diplomatic credentials meaning nothing in a room where humanity had never been invited before. The chamber stretched beyond human comprehension, its curved walls rising into infinity. Floating platforms held representatives from over 300 species, each one ancient beyond human imagination. Some were crystalline beings that sparkled like living diamonds. Others appeared as flowing energy, their forms shifting between states of matter. The air itself hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert thousands of alien languages into something resembling understanding. At the center of it all sat the High Chancellor, a being whose species had ruled the galaxy for over 2 million years. Its form was impossible to fully perceive, shifting between dimensions that human eyes could barely process. When it spoke, reality itself seemed to bend around its words. Humans of the third planet of Sol. The Chancellor's voice echoed through bioacoustic transmitters, each syllable carrying the weight of eons. You have been summoned to face judgment for crimes against the established order of the galaxy. Captain Morrison stepped forward, his boots clicking against the crystalline floor. Every eye, sensor, and consciousness in the chamber focused on him. The pressure was overwhelming, designed to crush the will of any species that dared challenge the Council's authority. With respect, High Chancellor, Morrison's voice carried clearly through the vast space. We're not here to face judgment. We're here to deliver an ultimatum. A ripple of shock passed through the assembled representatives. In 3 million years of Council history, no species had ever spoken to the High Chancellor with such directness. Several alien delegates began rapid communication bursts, their forms flickering with alarm. Ambassador Carter stepped beside Morrison, her diplomatic training steady despite the cosmic significance of the moment. The United Earth Coalition formally declares that we will no longer recognize the Council's authority over human space or human affairs. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the chamber's bioluminescent walls seemed to dim, as if the station itself was stunned by humanity's audacity. Then chaos erupted. Impossible. The cry came from the Draxoni representative, their scaled forms shifting to aggressive crimson patterns. No species has ever rejected Council authority. The consequences would be what? Morrison interrupted, his voice cutting through the din of panicked alien chatter. Exile from galactic society? Economic sanctions? Military intervention? He activated a holographic projector that materialized above the judgment circle, showing a 3-dimensional map of known space. Human territory appeared as a small cluster of systems, insignificant compared to the vast empires surrounding it. For the past 50 years, Morrison continued, humanity has been systematically excluded from galactic trade, diplomatic relations, and technological exchange. We've been treated as a curiosity at best, a potential threat at worst. The Council has already done everything it could to isolate us. Ambassador Carter gestured to the holographic display, which now showed detailed economic data. Despite this isolation, human civilization has not only survived but thrived. Our technology has advanced faster in 50 years than most species achieve in millennia. Our population has expanded to 17 worlds without Council oversight or approval. What you're suggesting, the High Chancellor's voice carried undertones of something none of the assembled species had ever heard before, uncertainty, is that humanity believes it no longer needs the guidance and protection that the Council provides to all civilized species. Morrison nodded firmly. We're not suggesting it, High Chancellor. We're proving it. The holographic display shifted, showing images that sent shockwaves through the chamber. Human ships, sleek and powerful, patrolling the edges of Council space. Human colonies, thriving worlds that had been declared uninhabitable by galactic standards. Human technology that seemed to defy the established laws of physics. Impossible, whispered the Vorthek ambassador, their gaseous form rippling with distress. The scans show faster than light drives that operate without Council-approved technology. How did they develop such capabilities without our knowledge? Because, Ambassador Carter said quietly, you weren't watching for the right things. You were monitoring us for signs of aggression, for military buildup, for attempts to join galactic society. You never considered that we might choose to go our own way entirely. The High Chancellor's form shifted, taking on aspects that suggested deep contemplation. Captain Morrison, Ambassador Carter, what you propose would fundamentally alter the structure of galactic civilization. For 3 million years, the Council has maintained peace and order through unity, through shared governance, through collective wisdom, through control, Morrison corrected, through the suppression of any species that might challenge the established hierarchy, through the elimination of anyone who grows too independent, too advanced, too unwilling to accept their assigned place. A new voice entered the conversation, ancient and filled with authority that made even the High Chancellor pause. From the highest tier of the chamber, a being descended that few species had ever seen in person, the Eternal One, oldest of the old, first among the ancients. Young human, the Eternal One spoke, its words bypassing translation entirely and speaking directly to the mind. You speak of independence as though it were possible, but there are forces in this galaxy that even the Council fears. Ancient powers that demand respect, submission, tribute. Without our protection, your species would face annihilation within a generation. Morrison smiled, and that expression sent chills through every representative present. It was not the smile of someone backing down from a threat. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment. Ancient powers, he repeated slowly. Yes, we know about them. We know about the forbidden zones that no species is allowed to enter. We know about the mysterious forces that demand tribute from entire civilizations. We know about the unexplained disappearances of any species that grows too curious, about the true nature of galactic power. The chamber fell silent as Morrison's words sank in. But most importantly, he continued, we know the truth about what's really hiding in those forbidden zones. Ambassador Carter activated another section of the display. What appeared sent waves of terror through the assembled representatives. Detailed scans of the forbidden zones showed not ancient sleeping gods or cosmic forces beyond comprehension. They showed ships, massive fleets of vessels bearing the technological signatures of species that had supposedly transcended physical existence millennia ago. Ships that were very much real, very much active, and very much engaged in activities that the Council had spent millions of years covering up. The question now, Morrison said, his voice carrying across the chamber and through subspace to every corner of the galaxy, is whether you're going to help us expose the truth, or whether you're going to keep protecting the lie that's been controlling galactic civilization for 3 million years. As the implications of humanity's revelation rippled through the chamber, one thought echoed in the minds of every representative present. If the humans were right about the ancient powers being a deception, what else had the Council been lying about? And more terrifyingly, what would happen when the real puppet masters learned that their secret was out? The answer would reshape the galaxy forever. 3 hours after Captain Morrison's declaration, the Galactic Council chamber had transformed into something resembling a war room. Emergency protocols activated throughout the station as representatives from 300 species struggled to process what humanity had revealed. The once orderly chamber now buzzed with frantic communication between worlds, each species trying to understand the implications of humanity's evidence. Dr. Rachel Thompson, humanity's lead xenoarchaeologist, stood before the central holographic display that now showed the results of 2 years of secret human exploration. Each forbidden zone had been mapped, analyzed, and documented with a precision that stunned even the most advanced Council members. Zone designation Alpha Prime, Dr. Thompson began, her voice cutting through the chaos. According to Council records dating back 3 million years, this zone contains a sleeping cosmic entity of such power that even approaching its borders would mean instant death for any vessel. The display zoomed in on a star system that should have been empty, untouchable, forbidden to all life. Instead, it revealed something that shattered 3 million years of accepted truth. Massive industrial complexes orbited 3 different stars, harvesting energy on a scale that dwarfed the combined output of 1,000 civilizations. Our reconnaissance teams found this, Thompson continued, her words falling like hammer blows on the assembled Council. Energy harvesting operations that have been active for over 2 million years. The technology signature matches perfectly with one specific Council member species. Representative Korvac of the ancient Zephyrian Empire stepped forward. their crystalline form shifting through colors that indicated extreme distress. Dr. Thompson, what you're suggesting would mean that a founding member of the Council has been systematically deceiving us for millions of years. Not just deceiving, Captain Morrison interjected. Stepping into the light. Murdering. 23 civilizations in the past 2 million years. All of them eliminated when they reached a certain level of technological sophistication. All of them in areas that were immediately declared forbidden zones afterward. Ambassador Carter activated another section of the massive display. The hologram now showed a timeline stretching back through galactic history, marking the rise and sudden disappearance of advanced civilizations. The pattern was unmistakable once revealed. Every species that developed quantum consciousness technology, Carter explained, every civilization that created artificial intelligence beyond a certain threshold, every culture that began asking too many questions about the nature of the forbidden zones, they all vanished within a single generation. The chamber erupted in confused voices, translation systems struggling to keep pace with the emotional outbursts of hundreds of species. But beneath the chaos, a pattern emerged. The oldest species, the founding members of the Council, remained silent. High Chancellor Vexithara's impossible form shifted through dimensions of meaning that conveyed deep unease. These accusations are beyond extraordinary, but the evidence you present appears to be authentic. How did humanity acquire such detailed information about zones that have been sealed for millions of years? Dr. Thompson's expression grew grim. Because we've been inside them. All 47 forbidden zones, and what we found changes everything we thought we knew about galactic civilization. She gestured, and the display shifted to show surveillance footage taken from human reconnaissance ships. The images were crystal clear, showing the interior of what had been designated as the most dangerous forbidden zone in the galaxy. Instead of cosmic horrors or sleeping gods, the footage revealed research facilities, laboratories where captured members of vanished species were being studied, experimented upon, dissected to understand the technologies that had made them dangerous to the established order. The Kenti civilization, Thompson said, highlighting specific images, disappeared 600,000 years ago after developing consciousness transfer technology. According to Council records, they were consumed by a cosmic entity that awakened in their star system. The surveillance footage showed rows of stasis pods containing Kenti individuals, their consciousness extraction technology being reverse-engineered by beings that the assembled Council members recognized with growing horror. They're still alive, Morrison said quietly. All of them. Every member of every vanished civilization for the past 2 million years. Kept in stasis, their knowledge harvested, their technologies stolen and suppressed. The revelation hit the chamber like a physical blow. Several species began immediate departure sequences, preparing to flee a council meeting for the first time in recorded history. But there's more. Dr. Thompson continued relentlessly. We know why they avoided Earth. Why humanity was left alone when our technology should have triggered the same response that destroyed 23 other civilizations. The display shifted again, showing humanity's solar system. But unlike the standard charts, this version revealed something that had been hidden for millennia. A network of monitoring stations formed a perfect sphere around Earth's star system, their technology clearly not of human origin. Surveillance posts, Carter explained. They've been watching us for over 12,000 years, monitoring our development, waiting for us to reach the threshold that would mark us for elimination. But something went wrong with their plan, Morrison added. When they finally came for us, they discovered something they hadn't expected. The hologram displayed footage from humanity's first contact with their would-be destroyers 2 years earlier. The recording was taken from emergency systems aboard a human research station at the edge of the solar system. The attackers' ships were elegant, advanced beyond anything in known space. But more shocking was their identity. Vessels bearing the insignia of the Eternal Ones, the species that had supposedly transcended physical existence eons ago, to become beings of pure thought and energy. The Eternal Ones, Dr. Thompson said, naming the galaxy's most revered species. The ones who guide council decisions through divine wisdom and cosmic insight. The ones who supposedly exist beyond the need for physical resources or territorial expansion. The ones, Morrison continued, who have been systematically murdering any species that might challenge their technological supremacy. The recording showed what should have been a one-sided massacre. Human ships were primitive compared to the attackers' technology. But something unprecedented happened. The human vessels fought back with a ferocity that stunned the ancient beings who had grown accustomed to easy conquests. They expected another helpless civilization begging for mercy, Carter observed. What they found was a species that had spent its entire history fighting for survival. Against nature, against each other, against every challenge that evolution could throw at us. The footage showed human fighters swarming the elegant alien vessels with tactics that no galactic civilization had ever developed. Ramming attacks, suicide runs, close-quarters combat that turned space battles into desperate brawls. The Eternal Ones had grown complacent after 2 million years of effortless victories, Morrison explained. They'd forgotten that not every species would surrender when faced with overwhelming force. But how did you survive? High Chancellor Vexithera asked, their form shifting through spectrums of confusion and awe. The technology gap should have been insurmountable, Dr. Thompson smiled grimly. Because they made one critical error. They assumed that technological advancement was the only form of evolution that mattered. They never considered that a species might develop other advantages. She activated personal recordings from human pilots during the battle. The footage showed something that defied galactic understanding of warfare. Human crews continuing to fight after their ships had been crippled. Injured pilots manually steering damaged vessels into enemy hulls. Engineers sacrificing themselves to overload reactors and take enemy ships with them. Willingness to die for your principles, Morrison said simply, isn't something you can calculate or prepare for. The Eternal Ones had conquered species that valued survival above all else. They'd never faced a civilization that considered some things more important than living. The surviving attacker transmitted a single word before our forces destroyed its ship, Carter added quietly. In the old galactic trade language it meant, how. As the full scope of humanity's revelation sank in, the High Chancellor's form began to shift toward colors and dimensions that suggested fundamental philosophical crisis. You're telling us, Vexithera said slowly, that the founding principles of galactic civilization, the very order that has maintained peace for 3 million years, is built on genocide and deception. We're not telling you, Morrison corrected. We're proving it. And now you have to decide whether you're going to help us stop them, or whether you're going to keep being their accomplices. The choice would determine the fate of every living being in the galaxy. The response came faster than anyone expected. As Captain Morrison finished speaking, the chamber's lights dimmed and a presence filled the air that made every species instinctively bow their heads. The Eternal Ones were coming in person, something that hadn't happened in 3 million years of galactic history. The air itself began to glow with otherworldly energy, as 3 figures materialized in the center of the chamber. They appeared as beings of pure light and thought, their forms shifting between states of existence that hurt to look at directly. When they spoke, their voices bypassed the ears entirely, speaking directly to the consciousness of every being present. Foolish children, the central figure intoned, its words carrying the weight of cosmic authority. You have meddled with forces beyond your comprehension. The sacred boundaries exist for the protection of all life in this galaxy. Dr. Thompson stepped forward, her scientific instruments already recording every energy signature the beings emitted. Despite the overwhelming psychic pressure radiating from the Eternal Ones, the human team remained standing while half the council representatives had collapsed in their observation pods. The boundaries exist to hide your murder factories, Thompson said calmly, and your victims are still alive. A wave of mental force swept the chamber strong enough to crack the crystalline walls. Several species lost consciousness entirely, but the humans stood firm, their minds somehow protected from the Eternal One's influence. How are you resisting us? The question came from the rightmost figure, its perfect composure cracking for the first time in eons. No species has ever been able to withstand our mental dominance. Ambassador Carter smiled coldly. You made one critical mistake during your 12,000 years of watching Earth. You studied our technology, our society, our military capabilities, but you never understood what made us truly dangerous. She activated her personal display, showing brain scans and psychological profiles spanning centuries of human development. Evolution doesn't just create better tools or stronger bodies. Sometimes it creates better minds, minds that refuse to submit. 12,000 years of warfare, betrayal, survival, and adaptation, Captain Morrison added. Every human who volunteered for this mission was tested for psychic resistance. We knew you were out there. We knew you'd try to break us mentally before resorting to physical force. The Eternal One's forms flickered, their perfect luminescence wavering like candle flames in a strong wind. For beings that had controlled the galaxy through sheer mental dominance, encountering minds they couldn't influence was like running into an immovable wall. "This is impossible," the central figure said, its voice losing the cosmic resonance that had commanded respect for millions of years. "We have guided this galaxy since before your star ignited. We are evolved beyond physical limitations, beyond the weaknesses that plague lesser species." "You're evolved beyond accountability," Morrison replied, "but not beyond justice." Dr. Thompson stepped forward, her equipment now fully analyzing the Eternal One's energy patterns. "Computer analysis indicates significant technological augmentation within your energy matrices. You're not pure thought beings at all, are you?" The chamber fell silent except for the humming of translation equipment and the distant sounds of panicking council members trying to process what they were witnessing. "You're cyborgs," Thompson continued, her scientific training overriding the supernatural fear the Eternal Ones projected. "Extremely advanced ones, but still fundamentally biological beings enhanced with technology that you've stolen from the civilizations you've destroyed." The revelation hit the assembled council like a physical shock. The beings they had worshipped as transcendent gods, the voices that had guided galactic civilization since its inception, were revealed as technological frauds. "The original Eternal Ones died out 3 million years ago," Dr. Thompson explained, her analysis streaming across the chamber's displays. "But before they died, they created perfect technological copies of themselves. You've been ruling the galaxy with the stolen identities of a dead species." "Lies." The leftmost figure raised its arms, and power began building in the chamber. Enough energy to incinerate every living being present. "We will not allow this deception to continue." The attack never came. Dr. Thompson held up a small device that hummed with contained energy. "Quantum disruptor field," she explained calmly. "Specifically designed to interfere with cybernetic consciousness matrices. We've had 2 years to prepare for this confrontation." The Eternal One's forms began to destabilize, their perfect light-based bodies breaking apart into component energy frequencies. For the first time in 3 million years, they showed fear. "You cannot destroy us," the central figure gasped, its voice becoming increasingly human as its technological enhancements failed. "The galaxy needs guidance. Without our wisdom, without our control, chaos will consume everything." "The galaxy," Captain Morrison said firmly, "will learn to govern itself. Without puppet masters, without false gods, and without the constant threat of extinction hanging over every species that dares to advance." But as the Eternal Ones continued to weaken, their leader managed one final act of defiance. Using its remaining power, it sent out a transmission that reached every corner of the galaxy simultaneously. "If we fall," its voice echoed through space itself, "the protocol will activate. Every species that has ever opposed us, every civilization that learned too much about our methods, their punishment awaits." The cleansing fleet rises. The transmission cut off as the Eternal One's forms finally collapsed, their stolen consciousness dissolving into harmless energy that faded into nothing. In the sudden silence that followed, emergency alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. High Chancellor Vexithera's impossible form had shifted to colors that conveyed absolute terror. "The cleansing fleet," they whispered. "We thought it was mythology, a cautionary tale about the price of defying cosmic order. What is it?" Morrison demanded. "Ships," the Chancellor replied, their voice barely audible. "Vessels built by the Eternal Ones using technology stolen from every civilization they've ever destroyed. Thousands of them, hidden in the deepest parts of space, programmed to activate if their creators ever fell." Ambassador Carter was already receiving reports from human monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. Energy signatures detected emerging from 17 different deep space locations. "Whatever this cleansing fleet is, it's real and it's moving." Dr. Thompson studied the incoming data with growing alarm. Ships larger than anything in recorded galactic history. Each one carries enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. And they're all heading toward populated worlds. "How long do we have?" Morrison asked. "Based on their current trajectory and speed," Thompson calculated grimly, 72 hours before they reach the first targets. The chamber erupted in panic as the full scope of the Eternal One's final revenge became clear. For 3 million years, they had maintained their rule through the threat of cosmic punishment for disobedience. Now that threat was becoming reality. "We have to evacuate," Representative Korvac said, their crystalline form shifting through patterns of pure terror. "There's no defense against technology that advanced. The only option is to run." "No," Morrison said firmly. "Running is what got the galaxy into this mess in the first place. 3 million years of accepting that some forces are too powerful to resist, that some authorities are too sacred to question." He turned to address the assembled council, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber and beyond to the billions of beings listening throughout the galaxy. "The Eternal Ones are gone, but their final weapon remains. The question now is whether we face it as separate species cowering in fear, or whether we stand together as a united galaxy fighting for our freedom." The next 72 hours would determine whether galactic civilization survived its liberation, or whether the price of truth would be the extinction of every thinking being in the galaxy. 60 hours after the Eternal One's final transmission, the first wave of the cleansing fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edges of 43 star systems simultaneously. The ships that materialized defied every principle of galactic engineering, vessels the size of small moons, their hulls incorporating technology from every civilization the Eternal Ones had destroyed over 3 million years. Admiral Patricia Wells stood on the bridge of the UES Victory, humanity's flagship, watching the tactical display with grim determination. Around Earth, a fleet had assembled unlike anything in galactic history. Not just human ships, but vessels from every species that had chosen to stand and fight rather than flee into the unknown. "Status report," Wells commanded, her voice carrying across the command center where human and alien officers worked side by side for the first time. Commander Tom Bradley consulted his instruments, his hands steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. 87 cleansing fleet vessels total, Admiral, each one registering energy outputs that exceed our combined defensive capabilities by a factor of 50. "And our allied forces?" "Every species that remained after the Exodus," Bradley replied. "The Zephyrians contributed their crystal ships. The Draxoni sent their entire battle fleet. Even the peaceful Vorthak have armed their vessels with whatever weapons they could fabricate." Wells nodded, but her expression remained troubled. In the past 60 hours, over half the Council species had chosen evacuation over resistance. Entire civilizations had packed their most essential population onto colony ships and fled toward the galactic rim, abandoning their homeworlds rather than face the Eternal One's final revenge. "Incoming transmission from the lead cleansing vessel," Lieutenant Maria Santos announced. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through." The main display shimmered, revealing something that made every being on the bridge step back in horror. The entity speaking wasn't one of the elegant Eternal Ones they had faced in the Council chamber. This was something older, more alien, more fundamentally wrong. It appeared to be a fusion of multiple species, their body parts merged together with technology that pulsed with malevolent life. When it spoke, its voice was a chorus of the dead, every civilization the Eternal Ones had destroyed speaking in unison. "We are the Convergence," it said, each word carrying the screams of extinct species. "We are the sum total of 3 million years of galactic evolution, perfected through selective harvesting and technological integration." Admiral Wells stepped forward, her uniform bearing the insignia of the United Earth Coalition and the new Galactic Freedom Alliance. "I'm Admiral Patricia Wells of the Human Defense Fleet. You're trespassing in sovereign space. Withdraw immediately." The thing that called itself the Convergence tilted its merged head, studying her with eyes that belonged to a dozen different species. "Sovereign space? Child, we are sovereignty. Every advancement your species has made, every innovation you consider unique, exists because we allowed it. We are the gardeners, and you are merely crops ready for harvest? Then you're about to learn the difference between crops and weeds," Wells replied coldly. Behind her, the United Fleet had begun moving into formation, not the defensive posture that galactic doctrine would have demanded, but something entirely new. Human tactical innovations merged with alien technology in ways that had never been attempted before. "Your confidence is amusing," the Convergence said, its voice carrying harmonics of species that had died when humanity was still learning to make fire. "Do you know what we did to the last civilization that showed such defiance? The Kantari believed their quantum consciousness technology made them invincible. The display shifted to show images of a dead star system, its planets cracked and lifeless. We turned their own technology against them, made them watch as their consciousness transfer systems became prisons, trapping their minds in eternal suffering while we dissected their bodies for useful biological components. The Kentari made one critical mistake, Admiral Wells observed. They fought alone. As if summoned by her words, the space around Earth erupted with activity. Ships dropped out of hyperspace by the thousands. Not the orderly formations of traditional galactic warfare, but the chaotic swarm tactics that humanity had pioneered. The cleansing fleet was massive, but they moved like predators accustomed to hunting helpless prey. The combined galactic fleet moved like a pack of wolves that had learned to fight as one. Begin Operation Redemption, Wells commanded. What happened next would be remembered as the moment galactic civilization truly began. Human ships, fast and aggressive, swarmed the massive cleansing vessels like angry hornets. Zephyrian crystal ships focused their harmonic resonance to disrupt the enemy's shields. Draxoni warships, built for honor combat, engaged in close-quarters fighting that turned space battles into personal duels. But it was the Vorthak who provided the key to victory. Their gas-form nature allowed them to infiltrate the cleansing ships through microscopic breaches, carrying explosive charges directly to critical systems. Impossible, the Convergence screamed as the first of its ships exploded in a cascade of stolen technologies. We are perfection incarnate. We are the synthesis of 3 million years of evolution. Your 3 million years of stagnation, Wells corrected, watching as more cleansing vessels fell to tactics they had never encountered. You stopped growing the moment you decided to steal instead of create. The battle raged for 18 hours. Ships died on both sides, entire crews sacrificing themselves to bring down enemies 100 times their size. But slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. The cleansing fleet had overwhelming individual power, but they fought like machines following ancient programming. The Galactic Alliance fought like living beings protecting everything they held dear. Admiral, Commander Bradley reported, his voice tight with exhaustion and hope. Long-range sensors are detecting massive explosions throughout the galaxy. The other cleansing fleets are being engaged by local defense forces. Wells nodded grimly. Humanity's example was spreading. Species that had been too afraid to resist for 3 million years were finally finding their courage. They're learning from our tactics, Lieutenant Santos added. The Kenti have armed their consciousness transfer technology as weapons. The Nexari are using their planet-shaping abilities to turn asteroids into kinetic bombardments. The Convergence's image flickered on the main screen, its merged form showing damage that would have been impossible hours earlier. This cannot be happening. We calculated every variable, prepared for every contingency. Your species should have been eliminated 2 years ago. You calculated wrong, Admiral Wells said simply. You assumed that technological superiority was the only factor that mattered. You never considered that sometimes the weaker side wins because they have something worth fighting for. As the last cleansing ship exploded in a burst of stolen starlight, the galaxy fell silent. For the first time in 3 million years, the constant background fear that had shaped galactic civilization was gone. Status report, Wells requested. All cleansing fleet vessels destroyed, Bradley confirmed. Reports coming in from across the galaxy confirmed similar victories at all 43 target systems. But the cost had been enormous. Nearly half the Galactic Alliance fleet had been destroyed. Entire species had sacrificed their entire space navies to achieve victory. Was it worth it? Lieutenant Santos asked quietly, looking at the debris field that had once been the most powerful fleet in galactic history. Admiral Wells looked out at the stars, where thousands of species were tasting freedom for the first time in their civilization's existence. Ask me in 1,000 years, she said, when the galaxy has had time to grow into what it was always meant to be. The war was over. The real work of building a free galaxy was just beginning. 1 year after the destruction of the cleansing fleet, the galaxy looked nothing like it had under the Eternal One's rule. The Grand Assembly Hall, built in the ruins of the old council chamber, buzzed with voices speaking hundreds of languages as representatives from over 800 species worked together to forge something that had never existed before. A truly free galactic civilization. Admiral Wells, now serving as the first Director General of the Galactic Freedom Alliance, stood before the massive view screen that showed the transformed galaxy. Where once there had been forbidden zones and restricted territories, now there were thriving colonies and research stations. The knowledge that had been hoarded for 3 million years was finally being shared freely. Final casualty reports, she requested from her aide, Commander Bradley, who had become her chief of staff in the new galactic government. Heavy, but not as catastrophic as we initially feared, Bradley replied, consulting his datapad. 47 billion lives lost across all species during the war. 38 star systems requiring complete evacuation due to cleansing fleet weapons. But the reconstruction efforts are ahead of schedule. Wells nodded solemnly. The number was staggering, but it represented something unprecedented in galactic history. Losses taken in a war of liberation rather than extinction. For the first time in 3 million years, species had died fighting for their freedom rather than being murdered for growing too advanced. What about the integration programs? Dr. Thompson, now serving as Director of Cultural Restoration, stepped forward with her report. Beyond our most optimistic projections, the species that fled during the war are returning faster than we can process them. More importantly, we're seeing cooperation between civilizations that had been kept isolated for millions of years. She activated the main display, showing a star map that painted a picture of unprecedented galactic unity. Trade routes connected previously separated sectors. Joint research stations operated in space that had been forbidden for eons. Most remarkably, entirely new civilizations were emerging as species that had been suppressed for millennia, finally had the freedom to develop their potential. The archaeological discoveries alone are revolutionary, Thompson continued. Every forbidden zone we've opened has revealed evidence of advanced civilizations that the Eternal Ones deliberately erased from galactic history. The Kenti quantum consciousness technology, the Nexari reality-shaping abilities, the Vorthak collective intelligence networks, all of it was suppressed to prevent other species from learning and advancing. Ambassador Carter, now serving as Secretary of Interspecies Relations, joined the briefing with news from the far reaches of the galaxy. We've established contact with 43 previously unknown species that had been hiding in deep space for millennia. Some of them are descendants of civilizations we thought were extinct. Others developed in complete isolation, creating technologies we never imagined possible. Any sign of resistance to the new order? Wells asked. Some, Carter admitted. A few of the older species are having difficulty adjusting to a galaxy where they can't rely on the Eternal One's guidance. The Velthari in particular are struggling with the concept that they need to make their own decisions about territorial expansion and resource allocation. That's understandable, Wells replied. 3 million years of being told what to do doesn't prepare a species for sudden freedom. But they'll adapt. The alternative is being left behind while the rest of the galaxy moves forward. Commander Bradley activated another section of the display, showing technological progress reports that would have been impossible under the old system. Innovation rates across all species have increased by over 3,000% in the past year. Without the fear of triggering an extinction event, civilizations are advancing at unprecedented rates. The statistics were staggering. Species that had remained technologically stagnant for millions of years were making breakthrough discoveries monthly. The Drexoni had developed new forms of energy that could power entire star systems. The Vorthak had created communication networks that connected minds across galactic distances. Even the traditionally cautious Zephyrians were pushing the boundaries of their crystal-based technologies in ways their ancestors never dared attempt. There is one concern, Dr. Thompson said, her expression troubled. The rate of advancement is so rapid that some species are having difficulty maintaining social cohesion. When technology advances faster than culture can adapt, the results can be destabilizing. Wells frowned. Specific examples? The Nexari have developed reality-shaping abilities that allow individual members to alter physical laws within limited areas. Without proper cultural frameworks for managing such power, they're experiencing internal conflicts that threaten their civilization's stability. The Cathari Collective consciousness has expanded to include artificial intelligences that may be developing independence from their organic creators, Bradley added. They're not sure if they're witnessing the birth of a new form of life or the end of their species as they know it. Ambassador Carter nodded grimly. Freedom includes the freedom to make mistakes. Some species will undoubtedly face challenges they're not prepared for, but the alternative, returning to the stagnation imposed by the Eternal Ones, is unacceptable. What about humanity's role in all this? Wells asked. Are we becoming the new puppet masters without realizing it? That's the most important question we face, Thompson replied. 47 species have formally requested that Earth serve as the coordinating center for galactic defense and exploration. They've seen what we're capable of, but more importantly, they've seen what we're willing to sacrifice. They want us to be their protectors, Bradley observed. But protection can easily become control if we're not careful. Wells looked out at the transformed galaxy, thinking about the price that had been paid for this freedom. 47 billion lives lost, entire worlds evacuated, civilizations that had survived for millions of years nearly destroyed in a single year of warfare. We establish principles now, she decided. Clear limits on Earth's authority, term limits for leadership positions, mandatory rotation of power between species. We make sure that humanity's influence decreases over time rather than increases. Some species won't like that, Carter warned. They've grown comfortable with having someone else make the difficult decisions. Sudden responsibility can be terrifying after millions of years of dependency. Then they'll learn to overcome that fear, Wells replied firmly. The same way we learn to overcome our fear of the eternal ones. The same way every species in this galaxy learned to fight for their freedom instead of accepting slavery. Dr. Thompson activated a final display showing long-term projections for galactic development. The curves were exponential, showing growth rates that defied everything the old order had considered possible. Within 1,000 years, she said, the galaxy we're building will be unrecognizable. Species will develop in ways we can't imagine. Technologies will emerge that make our current achievements look primitive. Entire new forms of consciousness and existence will become possible. And some of them may surpass humanity, Wells acknowledged. Some probably already have. Does that concern you? Bradley asked. Wells smiled, looking out at the stars where countless species were taking their first free steps into an unlimited future. It's exactly what we fought for. A galaxy where any species can reach their full potential without fear of being destroyed for their achievements. She turned to address her team, but her words carried through the communication networks to every corner of the galaxy. The Eternal Ones ruled through fear for 3 million years. They convinced entire civilizations that advancement meant death, that curiosity was dangerous, that some questions should never be asked. We've proven that every one of those beliefs was a lie. The galaxy we're building won't be perfect. Species will make mistakes. Conflicts will arise. Some civilizations will probably destroy themselves through their own choices. But for the first time in galactic history, those will be their choices to make. As the briefing concluded and the various representatives departed for their ships, Wells remained in the chamber, looking out at the transformed galaxy. In the distance, Earth was visible, scarred by war but still spinning in its orbit around the sun. The planet that had once been an unknown backwater was now the acknowledged birthplace of galactic freedom. The future was uncertain, dangerous, and full of possibilities that no one could predict. But it was a future that every species in the galaxy would help to shape, rather than one imposed by hidden puppet masters. For the first time in 3 million years, the galaxy was truly free to discover what it could become.